Hey y'all, and welcome back to Bourbon and Bones. This is a special episode, and if you're new to our channel, welcome. Like, share, comment, and subscribe below. So tonight we're going to talk about bourbon. No real surprise there, but several of you have asked me on YouTube and Facebook now, and also, by the way, real quick, follow us on Facebook at Bourbon and Bones, link below, about why I use a Glencairn glass so often and not anything else. So I figured, why not just do an episode about glassware? So tonight we're going to be trying the same whiskey in a few different types of glasses to see how it changes, how it tastes and smells, and yeah. So we're going to check that out. Our bourbon tonight is actually going to be Old Grandad Bottle and Bond. And this is kind of a personal favorite of mine and kind of an industry favorite as well. Good for prepping pallets. It's a little on the high proof side, being exactly 100 proof, being Bottle and Bond. We're not going to go much into the detail about the bourbon here, but mainly just focus on it because it's a nice high rye mash bill, lots of flavor, lots of scent, and a lot to play off of. Most importantly, it's extremely affordable, and it's a great bourbon, and you've got to try it sometime. So first up tonight, we're going to do what most of you have in your collection. Is the classic lowball. Rocks glass, old-fashioned glass, whatever you want to call it. It's this. And mine is from the Field Museum in Chicago. It's the Sioux edition. So it's one of my favorites. So some variety of this glass has been around since forever. And most notably in the 1700s, glass became cheap enough that people could buy them. And because they could buy them, it got cheaper, and so on and so forth. Everyone's had glass cups. And I'm sure every one of you has something like this in your liquor cabinet, and it hasn't really changed since the 1700s. And this glass is perfect for building cocktails in, adding some ice, pouring in a dram or so, and just enjoying it. So let's see how it goes. On the nose you get corn. It's just corn. Smell a little bit of heat, a little bit of that pepper. Caramel, nice corn bill, almost like a corn silk. Black pepper, just great flavor. I will say this, as you turn the glass up, you get this big nose blast of ethanol. And I think that's some of the detraction from it, because you smell it well, but as soon as you really put your face into it to drink, you get just the alcohol, the ethanol pouring through. So next up tonight is something that might be a little surprising to some of you. A lot of people use this, and it's a wine glass. So people have been drinking out of wine glasses since the ancient days. For the wine glass, there were wine bowls. But the glass that you would recognize today with the bowl, the stem, and the base come from the medieval days in Venice. Somewhere around the 1400s, which is crazy that this glass hasn't changed since the 1400s. Wine glasses have expanded since then, but the general shape has always stayed the same. So let's see how it works for us. So right away, the nose is different. You definitely have the corn, but you're starting to get a little bit more of the caramel scent coming off of it. And a little bit of yeast, a little bit of yeastiness coming in. And the palate's the same. Great caramels, great spice, and the linger after effect is just wonderful. So, really different on the nose though. It's really starting to give a little bit more depth of character than a little bit of a larger opening. Next is the salvation of many people at parties, moving across country, It is the coffee mug. This one being my favorite. It's from Jurassic Park, 1992, and perhaps the oldest form of cup man has ever used. So the oldest discovered of like an actual like clay pseudo porcelain cup goes as far back as the 16 to 1700 BCE on the island of Crete. For a coffee mug, that's quite a lineage. I have used this as having a nightcap many moves across the country while my bar is still in packaging somewhere, on camping trips, at someone else's house when all they have are really tall glasses and I don't need to sleep there that night. Having just a coffee cup around is a great option. So this one you actually get a little bit of that back to that corn ability, but I feel like you really have to get into the glass before you can really get to smell it. Perhaps that's because of the thickness of the walls, but still great bourbon. But the nose is different. When you put it, when you actually go for a drink, you don't get the ethanol like you do with the rocks glass. And I actually really expected it to be exactly the same as a rocks glass, and I'm actually a little surprised that it isn't. I think that if you were to put an ice cube in here, it'd actually keep the whiskey colder because of the thickness of the walls. Up next is perhaps the most recognizable glass that we'll have up this evening. And if you've ever had a drop of whiskey in your entire life, you've probably first had it in the shot glass. This one's the Art Institute of Chicago. Amazing place if you have an opportunity to visit. And let's try this out. So the big question is, where does the shot glass come from? Well, the popular mythology behind it is that it dates back to the Old West. When a cowboy was low on funds or gold dust, he would trade in a 12-cent 45 cartridge for a 12-cent pour of whiskey, and that became known as a shot. And this is a great story, but it's absolutely not true. The idea of that story actually dates back to the old spaghetti westerns, and the glass itself was well known long before that. It was first really mentioned in print in the 1940s, but it was so offhandedly mentioned that it's clear that everyone who read it knew exactly what it was. So that means it was in full circulation long before the 40s. And nevertheless, though, this is a personal bit of glassware, and everyone is familiar with it. So traditionally, a shot glass is shot, and because I don't want to do that, and I'm too old for that, we're going to try to sample it in a shot glass. So you actually get corn right away, but caramel, brown sugar, like toasted brown sugar. I guess being able to get your whole nose in there really gives you a lot of opportunity. But there's not a lot of swirling space, it's more like a shaking space. Yeah, shooting that is hot. You get caramel and 100 proof alcohol just rolling through. But it's a shot glass, I had to. And finally, what you've seen me use most, what you see most people use on YouTube the most, is the Glencairn glass. Now this is the newest comer to the glassware game, originally designed by Raymond Davis. And he saw whiskey was lacking official glassware like many other spirits does, like brandy and wine, vodka and beer. Everyone else at the time had their own distinctive glassware, while whiskey was pretty much drunk out of anything that was available. Tumblers, empty jelly jars, basically anything that you could pour in something into, you were drinking whiskey out of it. So Davis kind of designed his own glass, and it kind of just sat on paper for a few decades, and then after his death, the five heads of the Scotch world got together and worked on Davis's design and released in 2001 the Glencairn glass. At the same time, there's a bit of a competition and many different whiskey glasses were produced, but the Glencairn kind of floated to the top as the be-all end-all of current industry standard glasses. So master distillers will use Glencairn glasses to taste things right out of their barrel because of the way it allows the spirit to get onto the nose and to the palate. And so we're going to kind of compare the last four with the Glencairn and kind of see how it changes. One good thing about the Glencairn is that you can really stimulate the whiskey. When you start spinning it, it really creates a large vortex, which allows to really kind of wake up and allow the scents to start to flow out of the whiskey. And right away, there's a huge difference. Like you get a little bit of the corn, but it's more like corn husk. You get toasted brown sugars, you get toast, you get a little bit of that yeasty breadness to it. You even get a little bit of apple. And I will say, when you take a sip out of a Glencairn, your nose is just a little bit in the glass. And the first thing I initially taste right away is a bit of vanilla, which I haven't been able to taste with any of the others before. And I think the way that this glass is designed, it allows your olfactory senses to work with your tasting senses in a way that complement each other very well. So tonight we've looked at perhaps the most recognizable glasses that you have at home that people actually drink bourbon out of. And the winner for me is honestly the Glencairn. If I am exploring a bourbon, like if I'm really digging into it, it's going to always be the Glencairn for me. The way it works together with with more of your senses. Right now, I feel like it's the best designed glass for whiskey that you can actually get the best sense off of, the most complexity out of it. It allows you to explore deeper into a really nice bourbon or rye. I would say next would probably just be the old-fashioned glass, because you can build great cocktails with it. And I love a great bourbon or rye cocktail. But if I just wanted, I don't know, an ounce or two of something just daily, that's a great glass just to enjoy a nice glass of whiskey out of. But if I really want to get into it, it's going to need to be something like a Glencairn that allows a lot more exploration through. This is not to say go out and smash all of your glassware and just get Glencairns and that's all you ever drink out of ever. All of these have their value. Sometimes it's you're out camping, sometimes it's you want a nice cocktail, sometimes you're 21 and you don't know any better, sometimes it's you want to explore something, and sometimes you want to look fancy. But in our honest opinion, the best bourbon glass is the glass with bourbon in it. So don't forget, share a bourbon with someone. Good night.